For this seam sample, we're going to be completing the double-stitched seam. A seam is a row of stitches that holds two or more pieces of fabric together. There are different types of seams and they serve different purposes. For this sample, you're going to need to cut out 2 pieces of fabric 2 inches by 6 inches long. To construct a double stitch seam, you want to make sure that your stitch length is at 2.5 and you have a straight stitch. Because this is a permanent stitch, we want to make sure that we secure the beginning and the end of our rows of stitches by back stitching. So first we're going to start by sewing a plain seam. So we're going to find our 5/8 seam allowance. And stitch 1 row of stitching all the way down to the edge of the fabric. When sewing your garment or 2 pieces of fabric together, straight stitching is essential, so you want to make sure that you carefully use the markings on your plate to ensure accuracy. Once you get to the end of your row of stitching, you want to make sure that you back stitch. And then clip any of your thread with your scissors. Now that you've clipped the edges of your thread, you can now sew the second row of stitching. The second row of stitching is done at 1/4 of an inch. So one tip is that you can just line it up with the edge of your presser foot. And then you also want to make sure that you're back stitching at the beginning and the end of this row of stitches. Once you finish your stitching, you want to make sure you clip your threads at both ends of your sample. And then you want to trim your seam allowance. Oftentimes, double stitch seams are used on sheer or lightweight fabrics to provide more structure or strength. So when you're done, you want to open up your seam allowance and you want to fold or press over your inside seam allowance to one side of your fabric, making sure it lays nice and flat. So as you can see, I pressed the seam to one side, making sure that it lays flat on the opposite side as well, so it's nice and smooth.